Good morning, folks. Welcome everyone to the July edition of our Catch Up with Keeper webinar series. As per usual, we're going to give people a couple of minutes to fill on in, and then we will dive on in. And today is going to be a good one. We have a lot of exciting new features to share with you all today. And we also have Jody Strong back on as a guest for our app showcase. While we're waiting, did anyone in the chat go on a vacation in July? I know we got a lot of out of office autoresponders, so curious if anyone had a good time and away from the keyboard. Wow, Hawaii. Okay, starting out strong. Hawaii and wow, an Alaska cruise. I'm actually going to be in New Orleans next week. Wow, okay, everyone officially making me jealous. I think I regret asking the question. Wow. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get things started here. So thank you all so much for joining us this fine Tuesday morning. In case this is your first ever Catch Up with Keeper webinar, basically the way things work is we divide things up into 3 sections. First, we're going to talk about the new features that we shipped in Keeper over the last month. Second, we're going to talk about we'll answer any Q&A that people have. And then third, we're going to have an app showcase. And this month's app showcase is Jody Strong to come on and talk about workflows. Also, one general note is if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A section of Zoom rather than in the chat. We'll still be monitoring the chat, but Q&A makes it much easier to find them. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So the first really minor improvement I want to get out of the way is our updated practice settings. So now you only have to click one button and it will take you to all the settings rather than having a button to click another button to take you to a bunch of different settings. So it's a small improvement. We've also gone in and with different tabs sort of better reorganized some of the settings to make it easier to parse what you need to edit. So some of the little things, just wanted to get those out of the way first and foremost. Next thing we upgraded is the task list. One of the biggest things we did is we actually went ahead and made this a page. So you can now have it open as like just a discrete, let me see a list of all my tasks. And another thing we did here that is maybe not as noticed is we actually added all of the task descriptions here as well. So you can see all of your tasks and any task descriptions that you have on them. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and dive into a close. That's where we've spent most of this month's improvements on. And the first thing that we did is we added task completion dates. So now if you hover over the task status of any task that's done, you can see the date that task was completed and who completed it. That will only happen if you completed it after we shipped the feature. So if you shipped it before, or if you completed a task before June 29th, 2023, you're just going to get task completed before June 29th, 23, like this. All right. The next thing that we did is we added a new stock report to Keeper. which is transactions auto added by bank rule. And before I dive into how this report works, which is actually fairly simple, I want to talk about why we did this. So I'm sure I am not alone, but my bank feed coding experience is I never really felt comfortable using the auto add feature in QuickBooks because I felt like when I auto added the transaction, it would automatically get posted into Ledger. And then there's kind of no way to review those rules to make sure they're functioning properly. And this report is our attempt to give you that way. So I do think auto adding is sort of the culmination of a rule functioning well. You can auto add it and then it'll automatically go into Ledger. You don't even need to code it from the bank feed. And this is a good companion to turning on auto add because then you'll see all your transactions in this report here so that you can see whether those rules are functioning properly. And then if a rule is functioning properly, that's another good time to use the excluded list. And then you can go in and exclude any transactions. So if you have like 100 transactions that are auto-added via a rule and it always looks like it's functioning properly, great time to use the excluded list. All right. One more quick update on the task list, or sorry, on the close page here. This actually works on the client list as well, is we added a little feature called dynamic task reassignment so that if you have a team member who's out of office and you want to reassign their tasks to someone else, or maybe you reassign a client, you want to reassign their tasks to someone else. Now, if you change the preparer, reviewer, or manager roles on a client, it's going to reassign or give you the option to reassign all of your tasks to that new person. And this will only reassign open tasks, so it won't reassign any completed tasks. But that way, if someone's out of office for a month, or if you're handing off a new client, it's really easy to just take all of the tasks that are related to that client, give them to someone else, and then give them back if you need to. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have static vendor request links. So static vendor request links are a way to the sort of also the culmination of the vendor request functionality. We have more coming, but I think this is a huge upgrade in terms of the best practices for actually requesting W-9s from your client's vendors. So up until today, your vendor requests were something where you could initiate them after your client had paid a vendor enough that they needed a W-9 or that they needed a 1099 at year end or might have needed a 1099 at year end. But really the best practice for managing vendors is before you pay them, you request their W-9, you request their tax documentation, so that is sort of your point of maximal leverage where you can get the doc because they need to get paid. And this function, this new feature, static vendor request links, basically gives you the ability to do that. So the way it works is you come here to your vendor requests, you click add request, and you go to your W-9 requests, and you have this link. And this link is tied directly to this client. So each client has their own unique link. And then you can also choose who, if any, of your clients you want to notify when someone responds to this link. So commonly, like this would be like whoever is the person responsible for paying vendors at the client, unless that's you. And the really nice thing about this is basically it works the exact same way a normal vendor request works. But it doesn't have to be initiated. That's like directly tied to a vendor. So we'll just go ahead and fill one out. Just fill one out here. And then, of course, we can sign that. And now you'll get a new static link submission right here. And this static link submission will give you the ability to either link it to a vendor, so we can see we don't have a Bob Smith, or create a new vendor. If you create a new vendor, that'll create a new vendor in the vendor, in the client's QuickBooks file. And then you can go in and, of course, autofill all the information or fill it out manually, and then save that back to QuickBooks as well. One thing that you will notice did not get autofilled is the contact email. So in our infinite wisdom, we did not ship this with a feature that allows you to collect the email from the vendor, because that's not on the W-9 form. that improvement will be coming in the next couple of weeks, so that you can collect the email as well, both for your internal record keeping as well as for the ability to e-file a 1099 at your end. Okay. So yeah, so that's the static vendor request link. That's how that works. And that is all we have for product updates for this month. So now I'm going to go ahead and pause and take a look at some of the questions. So Megan asked for the who and when a task was completed feature. Is there a way to pull that info into a report or an Excel export? The answer is not yet, but that is coming in the next few weeks. Basically, on the task list, we're working on a way to add a column that is user completed and completed date, and then you'll be able to export that task list to a CSV. Okay, Lonnie asked, how do I add the transactions auto-added by bankroll report? If you have a client that predates the report, which is most of you, then you can add it. I'll delete this so I can show you. You just click add report, add keeper task, and then transactions auto-added by bankroll will be right there. Okay, a couple questions it looks like from the chat. So someone was asking about emails. So you don't necessarily need their email. It's not a fundamental requirement of the feature. But you do need some way of getting in touch with them to send them the link. So the idea behind static vendor requests is, depending on who is the actual controller, who's the person dispersing funds, who's the person that communicates with the vendor, that should be the person sending the vendor request to the client, or sorry, to the vendor. And that way, if it's the client who's doing that, they can say, hey, before we release funds, my bookkeeper needs you to fill out this W-9 request. So you can give this link to the client, and then the client can send it to their vendors. And then when that vendor responds, both you and the client get notified, so that the client knows they can pay the vendor, and then you've got all of the W-9 information for tax filing at year end. Ray asked, is there a way to auto add the firm's name in the subject line of all emails going out to clients and vendors? Yes. Yeah, you can just go to your email templates. And I think we have, practice name. So you can just use the practice name merge tag and put it right there. Yeah. So Deborah mentioned, in real life, they pay the vendor, and then you find out, yes, that is correct. That's what the normal vendor request functionality is for. So the hope is that with static vendor requests, you can give your clients a tool to coach them on the importance of the W-9 request, and give them an easy way to request that information as well. Okay. Andrea asked, can I show how to use the duplicate vendors report? Sure thing. So duplicate vendors, basically what it does, I have probably some things in the excluded list, so I'll remove them here. So duplicate vendors is just looking at vendors that are that have similar looking names. This is probably not the best sandbox data to use, but it's what we've got. So basically it's looking for fragments within the name. And so here we can see Google, Google Cloud, and Google Fiber. we may want to consolidate those all into a single vendor, or it may make sense internally for us to keep them broken out. If you click into the sort of like vendor pairing, it's going to show you all of the transactions with all of those vendors. And so you can see, and then you can also see here, we actually don't have any recent transactions with either Google Cloud or Google Fiber, but they're still active vendors. So at this point, we've got a few options. If we wanted to reclass the transactions and move the payee from one to the other, we can do that the same way we do that in any other report. So just bulk change the vendor. If we wanted to deactivate any vendors, we can do that here as well. And then if we wanted to preserve this as it is, and then just exclude this pairing from showing up in the report, we can click exclude. And that will basically, that's our way of saying like, these are not actually duplicate vendors. One other thing I'll mention is this sensitivity slider. So this is how you can increase or decrease the amount of vendors that you have. So if we drag this lower, you'll get a lot more duplicates, but they won't necessarily all be duplicates. So I think 50 is sort of our balance, but different, like depending on the density of vendor names in your client's file, you may want to play around with this one a little bit. All right. Ty asked, is there a way to default the time period for the closing tasks that pull up? Not sure I quite understand this question. Okay. So yeah, I think Ty asked, and Ty, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, if there's a way to basically change the default date range that's used for your closing task pickers, or for your file review report pickers. Not currently, although I think there is a candy floating around for that. It's definitely something that we're considering. Okay. And just to close the loop on Deborah's question about duplicate vendors as well. So if you do have an error, or if you do have a duplicate that you wanted to correct, let's go ahead and do this one. So let's say we've got Zoom and Zoom Inc. So Zoom Inc. doesn't actually exist, but let's say we wanted to take all of these and move them to Loom, and we wanted to consolidate the vendors. There's no way to merge the vendors in Keeper, but what you can do is what we call merging by hand, which is basically you bulk recode all the vendors to the vendor, or all the transactions to the vendor that you want to keep. So in this case, it'd be like Loom, for example, or Zoom. And then you can save that, and it'll bulk recode all of the transactions to that single vendor. And then you deactivate the other vendor. So here we deactivate Loom, and then we can deactivate Zoom Inc. And that's the process by which you sort of merge by hand. All right. Well, it looks like that's all the Q&A we have. Oh,
sorry, one more question in the chat from Adrian.
Okay. Uncategorized items that are waiting on the client, can the client recategorize them within the portal, or just comment? Just comment, so they can't recategorize them. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now. And I'm going to welcome up Jody. So let me find Jody here. Promote her to a panelist.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jody.
All right.
All right. Yeah. So what are we learning about today?
Well, today I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Today, I want to talk to you about how to build out Keeper beyond the month-end close. But first, let me tell you who we are. So I am the half of Hughes & Strong Consulting. I am BL certified, I have been a systems consultant in the past and just absolutely love the systems side of things. So I enjoy helping people to set up their systems, especially bookkeepers. And then my partner is Erica Hughes. She comes to us with the background in business and sales and has an incredible passion and gift for all things sales and messaging. So that is who we are. And today I'm going to highlight several different areas within Keeper: the templates, the saved views, client portal features, and then from there, where do you start to build out Keeper beyond using it just for your month-end flow? I'm going to pop over to my Keep demo account here. So the first thing is your templates. No, mine hasn't done it. All right. So within your templates, you've got project templates, close templates, but this is also where you can do your email templates. If you're utilizing your text features, you can do your text templates here as well. The questions that you can choose from for when you're asking your client questions, you can edit those here. You can add more questions as well. And then you have the opportunity to create templates for your reporting. This comes in handy, especially for those clients that you always have to do a specific type of report for them. Certain settings, certain comparisons, those kind of things. It may not take that much time each month to reset that customization, but here you can create that template and apply it to your client. And then that way you can save yourself that time and automatically have the reports pull up like that. That is the first feature here. Next, I wanted to talk to you about the saved view. Saved views really come in handy to eliminate that visual overwhelm because we have so much information built into it. But sometimes it's hard to find exactly what you want to see. You can get lost in all of the other data that might be in there. So utilizing these saved views for everything and anything really helps. So here we've got a simple view that just kind of highlights who's working on it, what flows are we in, what's the status, the progress, etc. Say I am getting ready to work on payroll and I want to know who do I need to work on payroll for this month. We have custom properties in here so that we can turn on and off which clients have payroll. We have in here another custom property to say what type of payroll system they have, as well as how frequently do they run it and what's the status, is it done or not. We also have what is the next run payday. So if I'm coming in to look, or if I'm a supervisor coming in to check on payroll to see if it's been completed, this type of saved view allows me to see it really fast. I know exactly what the status is. I know if the date has already passed or are we due for another one. So it's just a really fast way to get the exact information you need. So this particular saved view utilizes not only the saved view, but also your custom property. So when you're creating your saved views, you can come here to add and remove columns. At the top, you have your standard close. Then you've got your team communication. And then you have all your properties. And this is where you can customize to include as much data as you want. You can add new properties here, turn them on and off for whatever saved views you'd like to create. And then here at the bottom, you've got all of your task sections. If you add a new task, if you add a new section to your close, that will pop up here and you can turn that column on and off as well. Now I want to highlight the client portal settings here. So the first one I want to highlight is that client portal announcement. This is an excellent way to welcome your client to the client portal. It's a great way to give them important information first thing. It's also a wonderful place to put in instructions on how to use the client portal and to remind your clients where to find the information. Keep in mind that this client portal announcement is firm-wide. So it's going to be the exact same on every client's dashboard. Where you can add in some customization is with resources. So within the settings, you'd want to turn that on. And then from the client level, you can edit that. So coming up to client portal, here is resources. And from here, you can add in as much detail as you want. I like to utilize it as a place where any kind of saved information that you have or shared information with the client. This one here goes to a shared Google Sheet. This one goes directly to the North Carolina Department of Revenue so they can file their sales and use tax. This is just once a year, but it's good to have on hand so that the client remembers to do their annual report. So this can really come in handy for frequently asked questions by one client in particular. You can have that FAQ here in the resource center. You can also continue to point your clients to the resources and to their client portal as their #1 place to get information or to find answers. And by constantly referring them back to the client portal, they're more likely to utilize it. They're more likely to respond to the questions that you have or upload the documents and files that you might need. And by adding in those little personal touches with the client portal announcement and the resources, it does personalize that experience for the client, kind of enhances that. That's all well and good. You kind of know, okay, there's where the templates are, but how do I even get started with templates? Templates tend to be, things about the processes, but everything for your SOPs in there, but how on earth do I even start that, especially when I'm at full capacity and I just don't have time? Start right where you are. I'm a firm believer in the path of least resistance. So start exactly where you are. One of the easiest ways to begin this process is the next time you do something. So coming up in the next week or so, you're going to be starting the July month-end close. When you do that, find a system that you like, whether it's Loom or turning on Zoom or ScribeHow, any of those types of services, and hit record. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't even have to be on screen. You can fumble your way through it. You can have lots of long pauses. It doesn't matter. All that matters is just record that process. And the reason for that is it just gets you that much closer to being able to transcribe it, and you can outsource that. But it gets you the opportunity to write down all those steps. And by using a video of some sort, you'll catch where you might click on a button, but maybe you don't say it, that you click on that button, or that you go somewhere for a certain report. ScribeHow in particular will track your clicks. And then you have a document with screenshots that show that. So I would highly recommend, if you're able to, maybe you turn on ScribeHow, then you turn on Loom, and you've got both an audio and a written version of your process. From there, you can just type it in to Keeper, or you can outsource that for help with transcription, utilize a team member to do that as well. So again, it's the path of least resistance. Whatever's going to be easiest on you, that's where we recommend to start. The more that you're in Keeper, the more that you use it, the more that you explore it, the more time you spend in it, the higher your comfort level is going to be. The more comfortable you'll get and the easier you get over time. We've got a resource for you, Keeper Project Management Roadmap. The link is here at the bottom, or you can snap a picture of the QR code. But this, leave it up for just a minute. We've broken down what we would recommend, or an idea of how to approach this as well. So I'm not going to go over every detail, but I will give you a quick view of what this is. So this is a one-page version of the Keeper Roadmap, broken out into 3 phases. Then the other pages in here are broken down by the actual phase itself. And these are ways that you can approach getting Keeper built out beyond just using the tasks in there for the month-end close, and really make it your project management system. Get you that one step closer to having that all-in-one experience. And then, of course, there's extra features that you can optimize as well. So I'm going to put that QR code back up for just a moment here. And then Ben, we can open it up for questions. I'm happy to do anything within the demo as well. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jody. The link is also in the chat as well. And
Yes.
we'll post a link when we post our recap and recording, so that will be there as well. That looks super, super helpful.
Thank you.
And before we open up to questions, I just want to say, like, what I can't recommend enough Jody's advice of just like the shittiest version of documenting your process is better than the current state of like not having anything documented. That's what we do internally at Keeper for our own internal processes. So there's very hugely, but even for our close, which I run in Keeper every single month, I run our own checklist and I update our own checklist. As I like to say, my checklists are written in blood because every single update to that checklist is something that I screwed up that cost me an hour in my close. So Jody, thank you so much. Folks, I hope y'all listen to Jody's advice. She comes by it from lots of experience customizing Keeper for firms and also helping firms just generally run better closes and run better processes and workflows. So yeah, let me open it up to any questions. It looks like we've got one Q&A here. So Melanie asked, okay, this was actually an extension of a question I answered offline, so I will also answer it offline. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Jody? Awesome. So it looks like no questions, but lots of appreciation and praise, which is just as good. So I will ask one question, Jody, which is, if they want to get in touch with you to help them customize their Keeper, how do they do that?
I believe Erica's in the chat, so she'll toss in our email. But our email address is info@hughesandstrong.com. And of course, you can go to hughesandstrong.com as well for information. But yeah, we're happy to help. And we're also always happy to do brainstorming about a particular issue. We're available for that. Yeah, we're just here to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jody. And behind the scenes, thank you, Erica, as well. Want to make sure that she gets proper credit too.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, and we do have actually a few more questions coming in at the end. How do you save the name for a new view? I can actually hop in and answer this one. So when you create a new view, which is literally as simple as just like filtering, will also give you the option to create a new view. So you can update the current view, which will just like save over the current view, or you can save it as a new view, and then that will give you the option to name that saved view. Melanie asked if there were, on an earlier question that I answered offline, if saved views also exists in tasks. They do. So they're right here. And let's say you just wanted to look at your firm tasks, for example, you can do that. So it's not the exact same list of filters. So it's basically columns and filters that relate to your tasks rather than that relate to your clients, as befits a task list versus a client list. But it's sort of anything that might be relevant. So I'll give you a good example here. If we wanted to have like Stripe and we wanted to see all our Stripe tasks, we can actually even search for Stripe and create a view that way. And that will search for anything that has Stripe in the task, in the section name, or even in the descriptions as well. Okay. Andrea asked, how do you handle quarterly and annual closes? Annual closes are not a great way to do that. You just kind of like set it as a quarterly client. We are working on annual clients, so I'll mention that. But for quarterly clients, what you do is you go to your all client settings, and then there's an option here to make a client a quarterly client. And then once they're a quarterly client, you'll only be prompted to start the new close every quarter. And if they have a non-calendar fiscal year, those quarters will also correspond to the fiscal year. So if it's like September, October, November, December. So anyways, it'll like do the N+3 motion according to whatever that quarterly sequence is. All right. Okay. Well, that looks like everything now. So folks, thank you all so much for taking the time. Jody, thank you again for joining us and walking us through some of the more advanced features in Keeper, as well as some of the best practices for how to document your workflow. And wishing you all a great rest of your summer, a good start to the July closes, and I look forward to seeing you all again back here in a month. All right. Bye, everyone.